Benyi knew that she was in deep trouble. She knew that she needed to hide herself and think of a solution before her belly begins to protrude, because it was an abomination in the village for ladies who weren't married to be pregnant. It always attracted a death penalty of being banished to a lone island in the middle of nowhere. A long time ago, in a village nestled among the lush green hills of Ochigbo, somewhere in Africa, lived a girl named Benyi. She was just 16 years old, with eyes that sparkled like the stars in the night sky and teeth as white as milk. Her smooth dark skin and curvy body made her the envy of all others, such that even her age mates and ladies who were older than her envied her beauty. Benyi's father knew about the attention his daughter got in the village, especially from men her age and men who were older. That was why he resorted to betrothing her in marriage to an old farmer, a man with 3 wives and 11 children. Benyi dreaded the thought of being married to someone so much older than herself, so she sought solace in the arms of the village chief's son. Benyi and the son of the village chief were deeply in love with each other. They would sneak towards the lonely path across the river just to be with each other, and at night they would curl up in the bush away from the watchful eyes of others. Benyi knew that she shouldn't be seen alone around a young man. Her conscience haunted her, but she couldn't control her feelings, even though she knew that the consequences of her action could earn her death. Days turned into weeks, and soon Benyi's boyfriend had to travel out of the village. However, he promised to return back in time to marry Benyi. But somehow, Benyi had a feeling that this would be her last time seeing him. After he left, Benyi buried herself in farm work that she soon forgot about her boyfriend. But one day, something happened. She was eating dinner with her family, and then she threw up. Benyi told her parents, who were curious, that it was fever. But deep down, she knew it wasn't fever, because all through the weeks, Benyi has been sleeping and spitting about. She has also been finding it difficult to eat certain food. Benyi knew that she had to speak to her wise friend before it gets too late. The following day, Benyi rushed to her friend's house to see and explain things to her. Benyi's friend Ruyi checked her eyes and asked when last she saw her menstrual cycle. It was then that Benyi realized that she hasn't seen her menstrual cycle for 3 months. Benyi knew that she was in deep trouble. She knew that she needed to hide herself and think of a solution before her belly begins to protrude, because it was an abomination in the village for ladies who weren't married to be pregnant. It always attracted a death penalty of being banished to a lone island in the middle of nowhere. Days turned into months, and Benyi could no longer hide her pregnancy. Her parents got to know and they were disappointed. The entire village later got to know and she was dragged to the village chief, who condemned her immediately to death by banishment. Benyi wailed and begged, but no one listened. They called her all sorts of names. She was called a curse and an abomination. The banishment kennel was brought and Benyi was pushed into it. Then a man was asked to roll the kennel all the way to the lone island in the middle of nowhere. And afterwards, Benyi was dumped on the island and left to die. One day turned into 2 days, and 2 days turned into 3, 4, 5, and 6 days. On the 6th day, Benyi knew she needed help, but she realized that help wasn't coming, and so she cried to God to have mercy on her and send her help, else she would die on the lone island. Just as she was about to give up, a passing fisherman from a faraway land discovered Benyi on the shores of the island. He took pity on her, carried her into his canoe, and took her to his humble home in another village. The fisherman nursed and cared for Benyi until she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The fisherman worked tirelessly to care for her and her newborn child. However, it was the law of the village that there shouldn't be a single unmarried mother. So the fisherman and Benyi had no choice but to get married. But it was the best decision that they ever made, because at that time, the missionaries arrived at the fisherman's village and offered to send all the young people to school, including Benyi and her husband. Both Benyi and her fisherman husband were happy and decided to go to school. Few years later, the missionaries decided to send both Benyi, her husband, and child abroad due to their performance at school. So Benyi relocated abroad with her family. She got admitted into the university where she was given the course Humanitarian Law to study. Years later, she emerged as one of the best graduated students in the university. And afterwards, she started a humanitarian organization to assist single mothers and vulnerable underaged African girls. 10 whole years passed and life was good to Benyi and her family. But she longed for home. Every passing year, she would think about her village and wonder if there are still abandoned pregnant teenage girls on the lone island. Benyi couldn't sleep at night. Almost every night, she would dream of pregnant teenagers beckoning on her to come back to the village to save them. Benyi spoke to her husband about this, and they both decided that she goes back to their country and to her village to save those girls. Benyi made some preparations, and by the following week, she traveled back home. She was so excited by the time the airplane landed on the African soil, but her mind was on the girls in the village. So she hurriedly boarded a taxi and took some police officers with her. By the time Benyi got to the village, she observed that everyone was running towards a particular direction. By the time she asked around, a young man told her that another pregnant teenager was about to be banished to the lone island. Both Benyi and the police officers ran to the scene. Benyi arrived just in time to meet the village head, and then she yelled at him to stop. She introduced herself, and they were all surprised. She spoke to the entire village, especially the women, about protecting their young girls. The village head and the elders thanked her for helping them to stop such barbaric acts, as they were ignorant of this act. Benyi met her parents afterwards. They all apologized for their ignorant and wicked acts. But Benyi was full of thanksgiving. She told them that if she had not been banished, she wouldn't have met the fisherman who married her, took her in, and in turn made her to meet with the missionaries who sent her abroad for further studies. And she wouldn't have been able to come back to the village to rescue the girls. And that was how Benyi stopped the killing and the banishment of pregnant teen girls in her village. That is the end of the story. What have you learned from this story? One major lesson you should learn is that your pain can turn to your glory, or without the pain, there can be no glory. Benyi's pain turned into her glory, which further saved the other young girls. What have you learned today?